Am I the asshole for telling my wife I hate her new job? My wife, 37F, and I, 38M, have been married for 12 years and have 3 kids, 10, 8, and 6. During the pandemic, my wife's job allowed her to switch to 100% WFH. They never required her to go back to the office because her productivity actually increased, so there was no need. It made things easier for us too. I dropped the kids off at school, daycare in the morning, and she picked them up in the afternoon. She was able to keep up with a few things around the house during the day. We saved on gas and car maintenance, etc. A few months ago, she was contacted by a recruiter about a job. It would be a nice step up in her career path as well as a boost in pay. But there were drawbacks. The company had no WFH policy and would require her to work in the office. This was apparently non-negotiable. It would also be a 45-minute commute for her. We talked it over a lot and I expressed my concerns about how this would impact our daily lives. I told her that I don't necessarily think that the bump in pay is worth the major changes to our daily lives. Not to mention the stress that a long commute can have on people and that could impact their mood and how they interact at home. She assured me that everything would be fine and that we would adjust as a family and soon the new routine would just become our new normal. I told her that I would never tell her not to take the job, but I just don't know if it is worth the changes that it is going to bring. Ultimately, the decision was hers and she accepted the new job. She's been there for about 10 weeks now. To say it has been an adjustment is an understatement. She wakes up and leaves before the kids even get up. She'll help get a few things ready for them before she goes, but the entire morning kid routine is on me. I also do both drop off and pick up for all the kids too. Evenings have been a huge mess because I get home and try to get the kids distracted while I start dinner. When my wife gets home, she is usually stressed from the drive. Her commute has turned into over an hour due to construction and traffic, and takes 15 minutes for herself to calm down before eating alone. Then, after dinner she's going to bed earlier because she has to wake up earlier. I told her that I feel her new job has put an unfair amount of household and childcare duties on me and that she is being far less present in our lives when she's home. She told me that we just need to give it more time to adjust and things will get easier. I told her that 10 weeks is a pretty good adjustment period and I hate it so far. She told me I'm being an unsupportive jerk and I need to give it more time. Edit. I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now to deal with the huge amount of sexist bullshit I'm getting here. Those kind of responses are why men don't open up when they feel exactly like I do right now and just bottle this up. I have to get ready to pick up my kids. They're getting Happy Meals tonight because and curate it. I brought this up to her to try and find ways that we can make changes. Info. What changes are you suggesting? I doubt she can just frivolously quit the new job after just 10 weeks. You are the asshole. Why is it too much to expect men to support their partner's advancement and career when women do it all? The time. Suck it up, soldier. They are your children, too. Info. How shared was the housework and childcare before she started this job? Asking to clarify because a lot of people are assuming you did nothing after you got home from work. Info. What were you doing before the pandemic? What was the routine when she wasn't working from home? How did you manage? No assholes here. You shared the responsibilities when she was WFH and I think that it's fair that it does need to be slightly more equal than it is. Obviously, she physically can't do pick up and drop off, but she could pick up different responsibilities. Also, she's been at the job for 10 weeks. Is there any flexibility in the hours at all? A lot of corporates etc. are trying to be at least a little more accommodating of parents these days. Sadly, because it's the trend and they know they have to compete for their ideal candidates, rather than out of the goodness of their hearts. They might not, but it's worth ruling it out. Am I the asshole for suspending my daughter's allowance? I, 37M, have 2 children, my son who is 13 and my daughter who is 15. My wife was the one who came up with the names for our kids. As I never had strong opinions on a baby name, my wife decided to name our son after her great-grandfather. I never questioned it and never bothered to learn more about him, which looking back was probably a mistake. A few months ago, our son was at a party with his friends from baseball, and they were sharing TikToks with each other. One of the boys shared a TikTok about an almost name, basically, like it sounds, what your parents almost named you. One of my son's friends asked about my son's names and he mentioned who he was named after. The boy decided to type the name into Google and was scrolling through results until he found something interesting. My wife's great-grandfather was a state legislator in the southern U.S. before the Civil Rights era. As you may have guessed from that, he was a segregationist and voted in favor of bills to maintain segregation. When we picked our son up from the party, he started to yell at us and we had to calm him down. He asked why we would name him after a bad guy like his great-grandpa. This started some arguing in the car, and when we got home later that night, we discussed it. Our son told us he talked to his friends and he was changing his name, and that was final. My wife was a bit upset. She grew up here in the South when I'm originally from a hippie little town in New England. My wife has become a lot more accepting since we met, but this was still a bit hard for her. She eventually accepted it though and moved on. We now refer to a name chosen by our son with the help of his friends. His classmates at school have started to use it, and while he's had some issues, it hasn't been terrible. One of my son's friends is a trans boy and he has had it worse, though my son and his other friends always work on protecting the boy from bullying. My son's new name is one he's proud of and named after someone he looks up to. Recently he got some items with his new name, like a men's necklace and a sign in his room. The issue is, a few days after he got the items with his new name, which was 2 weeks ago, our daughter went and ruined them, by breaking the chain on the necklace and banging his sign. Our daughter doesn't like the name change, saying her brother is just being a sensitive zoomer, and something about boys being too weak these days. Our daughter has said edgy stuff like this in the past year or so, even when we condemn her. As a result of the damage, my wife and I told her we were suspending her allowance until the price of the damages were paid back. Our daughter is saying we are being unfair to her, and has apologized for what she did. My wife went on her Facebook moms group to ask for help, and most of the moms agreed we were too hard on her. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole, but you have dealt with the material issue but not the malice behind her behavior. Not the asshole. She's old enough to understand that actions have consequences, even if you eventually come to regret it and apologize. She has to replace the stuff she broke, and her allowance is being docked until it's paid off. That's called parenting. Not the asshole. You're a great dad, but why did your wife want her son to be named after a segregationist in the first place? What was the significance of that? Not the asshole. She destroyed her brother's belongings and has to pay him back. Your punishment is reasonable and your daughter needs to learn that actions have consequences. It's not enough to apologize. That mom group sounds sus. Am I the asshole for not forcing my nephew, of whom I have custody, to visit his mother? I, 34 female, have custody of my stepsister Gia's son, Arthur, 12, and I have since he was 6. Gia was going through a very tough time, having split up with Arthur's father shortly after having her second child, who was born with a severe disability, and she was struggled mentally and practically, which meant Arthur's care was falling by the wayside. Our parents stepped in and we all agreed that my husband and I would take custody of him. It was meant to be temporary, but after a year Gia formally signed over her rights and my husband, Arthur, my daughter and I moved abroad, 1.5-hour flight from Gia. Arthur visits his mother in school holidays and Gia comes out to visit us in the summer and at Christmas. Gia has worked very hard to rebuild her life and now has a fiancé and a third child. Over the past year, Arthur has been putting up more of a fight about going to visit Gia. He says he wants to see his friends during holidays and do more sports. He competes in go-karting. He also says he doesn't like going to Gia's because he doesn't have his own space there, has much less freedom, doesn't like the food, activities, etc. I do understand, but at the same time I've always said it's important that he sees his mother. This came up again when I was making plans for half-term and Arthur asked if he could skip his trip to see his mother. He said going to Gia's place just feels like he's being punished for not being our bio child. He said he just wants to stay home like his sister, my daughter. This absolutely broke my heart. I love Arthur just the same as I love my daughter, and the thought he would feel singled out in any way she tore me to pieces. I talked it over with my husband and we decided that we wouldn't force Arthur to go. Gia is furious. She called me all sorts of horrible things, accused me of pressuring her to give up custody of Arthur. This didn't happen. And stealing her baby. Again, not true. She berated me for letting him call me mum, for turning our parents against her, for turning her son into a spoilt brat who looks down on her. Eventually she said if I didn't make him come and visit she would sue me for custody of him. I've spoken to a lawyer, who says there is next to no chance that a judge would give custody back to Gia. The parents, mother and Gia's father, Think I should retain custody of Arthur but that I should still make sure he is visiting Gia, at least for the next couple of years, as he is too young to realize the impact not having any bond with her will be, and he can decide that when he's older. My husband and I are just trying to do right by Arthur. I don't want him feeling like we don't take his opinion into account. But at the same time I don't want to put him through the stress of a legal battle over all this. And I believe Gia when she said she'll start suing for custody, even if she won't win. So am I the asshole for not making him go? Not the asshole, but 12 yo is the threshold for kids sliding into their friends and own life. They no longer just do as they're told. Going to need to find a compromise, this won't get easier. Y'all need to seek a family therapist. Not the asshole. She went and had another kid during the 6 years Arthur's lived with you. I'm sorry Gia was struggling when he was younger, but she was somehow still able to go live a life without him. It also doesn't sound like she's made room for him in her current home. That's not fair to Arthur. You need to 100% follow whatever that little dude wishes are. He's been jerked around enough by having such a fractured situation. Following whatever he wishes is really the only way to allow him to heal. Verbally support him, tell him repeatedly there are no wrong decisions. That's very important. That's coming from someone that went through similar. As he is too young to realize the impact not having any bond with her. Well, he is old enough to realize his mom chose to give him away on the pretense she can't take care of him, yet she can take care of her younger than him child. Put that on top of feeling singled out if forced to go to her. Stick with the decision your family of 4 made. I get that it won't be easy or very kind to your sister, but choices and decisions have consequences. Your child is more important than your stepsister. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Arthur is your son, not hers. You are doing what is right for him, and if he wants to stay at home to be with his friends and do sports during the holidays, then he should. It may be tough on Gia now that she is in a better place, but his upbringing is no longer her responsibility and she doesn't get to dictate what happens. Someone probably needs to be very blunt with her and explain she is now effectively his aunt. Am I the asshole for being okay with my baby speaking my wife's native language? Hi and thanks in advance for reading this. I'm 30M and white British. My wife Jan is 29F and originally from Pakistan, but was brought up as an expat in a bunch of European countries. We have a 4-year-old Peter who is, obviously, mixed race. She is good with languages because of her upbringing. Urdu is her mother tongue, and her English accent is better than mine. The language she is most comfortable with is German, as all the countries her parents worked in were German-speaking. Jan was keen for us to have a family language. I was keen to learn Urdu, but we quickly find out I am terrible. She found it hilarious, and decided it would be less painful for us both if we switched to German. I did some at school. She taught me a lot. I attended some classes and am near fluent now. Hence, Peter grew up trilingual. English, I speak to him. German, all 3 of us speak. And Urdu, she speaks to him. He knows Shakespeare, he's 4, but speaks all 3 impressively. My parents are proud of him, as are Jan and I. But my Sil, also white Brit, who has a daughter Jenny 5F, is really angry. She keeps telling me that we're deprioritizing English and that Peter will struggle when he starts school and speak with an accent. I said that implies most ethnic kids in the UK are failures. And that Peter has a British father, and my side of the family are all white British. Peter's not lacking in Britishness. I called her out on the accent thing. He doesn't have one. But an accent is not a fault. I don't know why she thought he'd have one, by the way. My wife sounds like a native speaker. Cue a gathering last week. Peter was playing with Jenny, and pointed at something and said its name in all 3 languages. Jenny found that fun and kept asking him to name things in all 3, which he happily did. I thought that was a very normal interaction, but my Sil called to say she will never bring Jenny over again if I let Peter confuse her with other languages and to not let him show off in family events. She said that it was setting Jenny back, and she does not want to be disadvantaged. She said Jenny copied some words in English in Peter's accent, except it's not an accent, it's just a slight lisp. Many kids have it at that age. I am refusing to forbid Peter, especially as Jenny asked him to do it. I never want him to think my wife's language is inferior and meant to be hidden. She doubled down and accused me of sabotaging Jenny because you two know Peter will be discriminated against, so you want Jenny to face the same. I said that's ridiculous. We are aware Peter will definitely face some discrimination, but that'll be because of his race, not because he speaks German law. My brother, however, has joined her side, and refuses to bring Jenny over. Am I the asshole? Should I have stopped Peter when I noticed the game, or tell him to not speak the other languages in front of my side of the family just to smooth things over? Was I disrespectful to her parenting style? My kids speak both French and English, and almost every other kid they met thought it was super cool. You're not the asshole at all. Your Sil is off her rocker. Not the asshole, but the racists in your family are. Keep up the German and Urdu. It's great the kiddo is trilingual. Not the asshole. I think they just have inferiority complex as parents, and maybe racistes. Don't worry about the accent. Kid this age are very good at learning languages, and he will do just fine in school on this matters. That will even be beneficial when he starts learning other languages in school. Not the asshole. This feels like your sister is manifesting a combo of jealousy, racism, and nationalism. Bilingual children are the coolest kids I have ever taught at my preschool. And I say that because I spend equal amount of time learning from them as they do from me. Not the asshole. Your sister is probably jealous, as your son looks very smart.